All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Samuel Kim, and I have the great delight and honor to be moderating this opening plenary panel discussion entitled The Age of Asia, Asian Philanthropic Leading the Way. Here with me, I have a very esteemed panelist here with me, and they represent different organizations, also coming from different countries. And I'm sure that you will enjoy and appreciate the diverse perspective, insights, and the experiences that will be shared this morning. Now, there are three key themes here. One of the themes is, why is it important at this point in time to define philanthropy in the Asian context? Second, we want to talk about the essence of pursuing the Asian philanthropic ecosystem, where we are able to share best practices, scale collaborations, and even professionalize philanthropic sector. And the last one is going to be the essence of why is it important that we come up with some creative and innovative ways in addressing the development challenges and to continue to enhance the effectiveness of our interventions. And so that's going to be the focus of this session. Now, one thing I'd like to mention again, the moderator has mentioned this. I want you to take advantage of this session. We have the Slido. And please do put your questions. I have a set of questions I have prepared for our panelists, but I will ensure that we want you, your questions of your own to be addressed as well, so that we are able to make this session more spontaneous, yet more rewarding and engaging. Okay? So with that, let us begin. Well, first of all, we've got Puan, Siti, Kamariah. Thank you so much for this wonderful event. I really enjoyed your speech yesterday evening. And I was really impressed by the Malaysian hospitality. And so congratulations to you and your team. Can you give a big round of applause? And you know, perhaps what we can do is that because this is the beginning of the day two, perhaps we can start off with a short greetings, welcoming our audience. Can we do that? Is that okay? All right, sure. So who would like to begin? Go ahead.
Well, let me perhaps introduce myself. I'm Gabriel Leung. I'm from the Hong Kong Jockey Club Charities Trust and the Institute of Philanthropy. So I come from Hong Kong and bring very happy greetings to this year's forum, which is particularly well thought out and curated. I am sorry that my flight got severely delayed yesterday, otherwise I would have joined you. But I did follow on live stream and could tell you that it actually played very well. So I sat on the tarmac for 6 hours yesterday. So I watched most of the morning actually on live stream, and I am a testament to that it works exceedingly well. So I don't think I missed anything, but thank you again for the privilege of coming to share a few thoughts with you.
Thank you.
Well, good morning to all of you. First of all, again, allow me to introduce myself. I am Masato Seko. I'm working for the international program at the Nippon Foundation, which is a Japanese organization. I'd like to thank, first of all, the organizer, Yayasan Hasanah, for inviting me to this panel, which is an honor for me and privilege. I also like to acknowledge how inclusive this conference is. You can see the sign language interpretation is displayed on both sides of the screen, which is make inclusive conference, especially for the deaf community. For those who may have heard about our introduction of organization in yesterday's afternoon session, we are very much into supporting persons with disabilities. So I'm very much grateful to see the inclusive measures and the consideration being made in organizing, not only just talking about inclusiveness, but also the conference itself is open to all stakeholders. So I'd like to acknowledge and express my sincere appreciation to the organizer of this conference. And congratulations to the successful convening for the first day of the conference. I was here physically, listening to the sessions. So I can say that I was very much successful. Not only the sessions, but all the performances, dancing, and music. So again, congratulations to Yayasan and Hasanah.
Okay. Arigatou gozaimasu, sincerely. Thank you, terima kasih for being here. I'm Siti Kamariah Ahmad Subki. It has been my greatest honor to be of service to each and every one of you. And please continue to enjoy the second day of the conference, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, wonderful. Thank you very much. I want to ask you this question, and this is going to be for every one of our panelists here. In contrast to the declining aid from Western countries, Asian philanthropies are emerging, driven by the economic growth, generational wealth transfer, and also the increased interest in financing local sustainable solutions. So the question is, why is it important at this point in time that we need to define philanthropy in the Asian context? And what distinguishes this from that of the Western form? Please.
Well, when I have first heard of this question, what is Asian philanthropy? This reminded me of similar discussion that I witnessed in the 90s. It is not about philanthropy, but it was about what is Asian values, what is Asian democracy, or what is Asian ways of doing. And many have mentioned about the aspect of Asia being a community-based, having placed importance on family ties, family bonds, social harmony, there's a long list of trying to define what is Asia. But we know what happened to that discussion at the very end. We found out that there's nothing which is distinctly Asia. You can also find similar concept being cherished in the West and also in other parts of the world. So the first point I wanted to say is that it's quite tricky to define Asia. I can also mention another example. In the 1930s and 40s in Japan, there was similar discussion about exploring what is Asia, of course in a different context. Pan-Asianism, the concept of Greater East Asiatic co-prosperity sphere, in Japanese, Daitowa Kyoeiken. This was also an attempt to find something Asia, which we all know what happened to our controversial ventures in Japan in the 1930s and 40s. We lost the war. 80 years ago today, August 15th, 1945, we lost the war, we surrendered, we lost the war. And the whole discourse on the Pan-Asianism and this Greater East Asia, co-prosperity sphere, all this discussion ended there. So what we can learn from the similar discussion trying to define Asia in this discussion today we're going to have on philanthropy. And I want to submit one view that all these discussions in the past, we saw the West as a model or a thesis. If you take a dialectic perspective on this, we saw the West as a thesis, and we saw ourselves, Asia, as an antithesis. And we stopped there in the discussion. We stopped there trying to define ourselves in antithetical concept of Asia. And as I mentioned, we ended up in finding that there's not much Asian in it in the discussion that we had in the past. on all the aspects that we think that is Asia. So the discussion on Asian philanthropy should not define itself, what is unique in Asia, but more to do to synthesize the Western ideas and Asian ideas into completely different level of discussion on philanthropy. So we should not discuss about Asian philanthropy, but we should discuss about what is the philanthropy 2.0 or 3.0 that is applicable globally. And I think that that's the way forward in discussing Asian philanthropy. So that's my point for that.
So let me just say that I very much echo what Masato-san has just said. And in fact, that's precisely why, in fact, all of the organizations that are sitting on this panel, plus quite a few others in the audience, have come together to really think through some of these very deep foundational questions in a commonly shared objective and initiative called the Commission on Asian Philanthropy. There are 13 of us all across Asia, from the Middle East or the Near East, using an older term, to the Far East. And as we sort of make progress and struggle with these very deep questions, I think that there are a couple of perspectives. If you take a step back, you can start thinking about, well, is it really a new phenomenon, the Asian way of giving, or Asian philanthropy? Or has it always been there, but it's known by some other traditions? So if you actually look at the Confucian concept of kindness, or ren, it pervades East Asian history, including that of China, Japan, Korea, or in fact the traditions of Islamic giving, zakat, waqf. These have been there for centuries and have operated from the neighborhood level up to nation building. So there is that very deep foundation already. Secondly, if you then think about, look, what we now associate with philanthropic giving is actually a fairly Western concept and a fairly recent concept. Our great friends, the Rockefeller Foundation, they came into being, I suppose you could call that postmodern philanthropy. That's the model that we are most familiar with, but that's barely a century old. And if you actually go back to the Rockefeller archives, when it was set up to expire within the lifetime of the first generation of the Rockefellers. Now they're down to the fourth and fifth generation. It's still going very, very strong. So that actually brings a little bit of echoes when, in fact, a much more modern contemporary philanthropist, Bill Gates, he actually announced just barely a day after he was in Singapore at Bun Heung's invitation a few months ago that he's going to spend down his endowment over the coming 2.5 decades, which is exactly what Rockefeller actually said at the very, very beginning. So this whole concept, do you actually pass it from generation to generation, which seems to be, with that heritage, a very Asian concept, or do you actually spend it down so that there is intergenerational wealth transfer and that social escalator actually and conveyor belt keeps on moving? And if you then sort of say, well, if you think about the Rockefeller model, the Gates model, whatever, as what we now know as sort of the standard, what about the Asian way? Well, there is actually no single Asian way. Asia is a bit of a mosaic, isn't it? So if you really think about it, there is this great emerging force in philanthropy from places like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, from Qatar. And then there is, of course, the very two big nations of China and India, each with their very different ways of giving, and by contemporary government policy. So in China, you have the president talking about, and having spent a lot of time talking about, the third distribution, common prosperity. In India, they just celebrated a decade of that levy, the CSR law, so-called. And that has really doubled and tripled their corporate philanthropic giving. Then you have this great block, the ASEAN community, where we sit. You are at the heart of it. And there are, of course, great work being done in this country, in your neighbor Singapore and Indonesia. And there is that. And then, of course, there is our great friends from Japan. They've had the longest history of professionalizing the whole philanthropic sector. Of course, Nippon Foundation being the absolute leader in that. Our Korean friends as well. So you have all these trying to now find a common language and ultimately to make society better. And in this age, as you put it, of what we now think of Western philanthropic giving, or Western development aid giving more specifically, sort of seemingly retrenching, how should we think about this whole Pangea of a globalized community of global public good and common good? So those are some of the thoughts that all of us, I think, have been struggling with, discussing, and hopefully learning every time we meet together.
Thank you. I retraced my steps at Fort Cornwallis in Penang, one of our phenomenal work that's done by our sister entity, Siti. Fort Cornwallis was built in 1786, very interesting setup. But I can't help wonder, what is the real history of behind Fort Cornwallis and how the name came about? And so this brought us to our recent visit at the Islamic Arts Museum, where 200 years ago, for example, Tipu Sultan of Mysore actually fought really hard against the first wave of colonization at then India. But what a lot of people don't realize, that huge part of Asia was very different 200 years ago. We were not the nation states that we envision and experience today, but we were more of maritime states, polity, and hence the theme of our conference, which is the sea that's ever listening. And coincidentally, also retracing my steps in terms of heritage, and we see how we are connected through from Fort Cornwallis to the Pankor Agreement and the war. And it was also last year, as I retraced our steps as part of our nation building, I inherited a piece of land near Pankor, which is Lekeh, where one of the 7 war heroes that fought valiantly during Perak War, which is really the first war that ever happened in the country in 1875. And as we celebrate a very much lesser known piece of our history, which is 150 years that Malaysia, or at that time, Perak, as part of Tanah Melayu, actually fought against a foreign invasion. And so as I reflect what Seko-san said, you said that Japan lost the war. So this part of history, part of me, made me question, did we really lose the war? Because as I retrace my steps, I realized that in Asia, in our ASEAN way of doing things, winning and losing was never really part of our vocabulary. Truly, there was a time, as before Fort Cornwallis was built, the shores welcome people from all walks of life. They are traders, they are merchants, they are people, and we're lesser known as color and creed. We're just known as people, as human beings. And as they arrived at our shore, we were so ever welcoming. We did business together, we traded, intermarried, fell in love, become friends, enemies, lovers, and whatever you call it. But it was just all an act of being human. So there was no talk of winning or losing. Which is why, for example, when the Pangkor Agreement was signed, it was really not about an agreement. It was really about an understanding. Let's do business together. Let's just put our terms on paper. But I think this is where, after 5 generations, a lot of our ASEAN way of doing things, of history, is forgotten. Because later, when we read in history books, the other story is all about agreements, winning the war, losing the war. But in Asia, which is very much embedded into our textile, our fabric, and our rice variety, it really is about the spirit of gotong royong, bayanihan, of working together, holding hands, solving a problem, as you can see in the morning's performance, building a bridge together. If you have the knowledge, bring it on board and let's just build this bridge together. If you have the resources, come and help this community rebuild from flood, from calamity. And that was something that is so embedded 200 years ago, 400 years ago in the ASEAN way of doing things. So to answer your question, Dr. Gabriel, is this something that we've just picked up today in terms of philanthropy? I think that Asia used to lead philanthropy. It is in our blood, in our DNA, in our motives of textile, where unity is really interwoven in the clothes that you wear. Like I shared that how there are 500 varieties of rice in Sarawak alone in Malaysia. And if you combine the entire variety of rice in ASEAN, you'll be getting thousands of variety, which also showed that ASEAN is used to living in diversity. It is in our core heritage, what we inherited as part of being people of this part of the world. So, yeah, like to bring it back to the panel, like I think it's in our DNA. What we need to do collectively is to rediscover, reconnect, and relive all the experiences that have been common and relive realities of our past ancestors and bring it to our present state and reality.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think there's so much here already. Even though it's just one question, you have already given so much. And I personally have learned a lot. One of the things that we have covered is the essence of the humility, right? Because there's so much happening. How do we synthesize this? How do we learn from one another? How do we really pick the best that the West or the Asia or any parts of the world can offer? Really want to pick the best so that we are able to enhance the effectiveness of our intervention. I think that was what was mentioned. Mentioned also about the compassion towards other people, serving other people. Bridge building, that was also the another one. So I think these are also some elements of what we call the Asian values as well, right? Collaborations and strong community ties. So my next question I want to ask is, there's a growing wealth again, and with that, people are beginning to become more interested in wanting a social change, wanting improvements in our society. So the question is, how do we make our giving more timely, more strategic, and more impactful? Again, we give, but how do we make it timely so it's more effective? How do we make it impactful? How do we make it more strategic? That's the question I want to ask our panelists. Okay.
So in terms of timeliness, this is where the concept of time and being timely is a KPI. Pretty much, and I think, and sometimes that makes a lot of people cringe when okay, you have got to do good, timely. But the truth is that, and I think that's the concept of listening, and you've been spending a lot of time with the community, the concept of being time actually disappears. Time flies when you're having fun with your best friend, right? So, which is why we work with partners that's very closely connected to the ground. individuals who are already working with artisans and for flood relief efforts. For example, we take pride that we are always there, the first to be on the ground to support people in need through our partners. So listening is key, but it's also most importantly listening to the people that matter on the ground. So you can see here KPI versus just being part of the committee, doing something that comes most naturally to you.
Right. For me, how we can make a giving impactful. 2 points. One is how can we make our grants or the support be a part of a sustainable solution to the issues that we're facing in Asia in this context. The second is, of course, not everything has to be scaled, but there are certain models that worth scaling. So whether our givings is ready for scaling, that will be the 2 points that I would like to address. And in doing so, the partnership is important. Collaboration amongst various stakeholders are very important, especially engaging the primary stakeholders, communities. These are the key to bringing our giving more impactful, sustainable, and scalable. So the way in which we have been trying as our foundation, trying to not just to have a primary stakeholders, community engage and participate, but we try to delegate the authority to decide what to be done in the community. It's not that the foundation staffs, working in an office in Tokyo or in the city decide what to do. You have, I think this resonates with the topic of this conference here, listening. You have to listen to the people where you are targeting. And in that way, maybe that's where in terms of partnership, that's where the idea of blended finance comes in. And in terms of engaging the community, that's where trust-based philanthropies and other ideas will come in. So I point out those points for.
Let me just sort of reflect on how far we have come. So being compassionate, kind, collaborative is in our DNA, as Siti has said. But we are now living in a professional era of philanthropic giving. And many people still underestimate, number one, that it is indeed a profession to do grant making and to execute those grants in partnership with our grantees, but for the ultimate benefit of those whom we serve. Ultimately and fundamentally redressing this growing chasm of inequities. So that's number one, it's a real profession. Secondly, given that it is a professional set of competencies that we require, we are still quite far from seeking the recognition for those who actually decide to dedicate as a vocation to work in this sector, both in terms of the award and reward systems, but also in terms of the training and continuous professional development we provide. Third, if we, however, go down this route too far, then you get into what Masato-san just said. Hey, there is this growing counter-movement of trust-based philanthropy. Okay? actually spearheaded by many of the important better halves of the US Magnificent Seven tech chiefs. So those brave ladies have said, look, you know, my other half generates all this wealth and then apply the same kind of business and commercial corporate KPIs and try to apply it to philanthropy. And what they say is, have we gone too far down that road? Have we been asking too many questions? Have we been filing too many reports without actually listening and partnering with the ultimate beneficiaries? And so that's the constant tension, and I think is a healthy tension, that we should never forget, we should always struggle with, because ultimately we have to be grounded in the lived experience of those whom we purport and hopefully really serve.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I think the key point here, you mentioned about listening, and we can translate this into a word called diagnosis. If you want your interventions to be effective, you have to really diagnose properly. And how do we do that is really get to know who we are serving by listening attentively to them. And so that was a great message that you have shared with us. I want to ask Seko-san this question to you. You present Nippon Foundation, and last year you have launched what you call the Commission on Asian Philanthropic Ecosystem, right? To create, the intra-Asian philanthropy ecosystem. Can you tell us a little bit about what the vision was behind this, and what change do you hope will rise from this initiative? And Dr. Leung has also mentioned about this as well.
Yeah, right. This is a collaborative initiative led by Dr. Gabriel. So I think he can articulate better about the visions and the expectation from this initiative. But the things from what I can say from my perspective and expectation from this initiative to discuss about Asian philanthropy is that what is needed in Asian foundation, Asian philanthropy, is more of a partnership, collaboration. If you look at the Asian landscape in philanthropy, many Asian foundations are working on their own. They are not. We don't see much of a collaboration. Of course, we see many. Some example are led by Temasek Foundation that's been doing a great job in bringing together multiple foundations for specific thematic areas, climate change and others. But I think we can do more. And there's a great room for improvement in terms of collaboration. And even in this initiative that we are jointly undertaking, we have a great members in the group discussing about this very topic of how we can look at what we can do in Asia in the philanthropy sector. I think we all here are a member of the initiative. Gabriel already mentioned 13 members, which includes China, big foundation from China, from Malaysia. Yayasan Hasanah is representing here in this commission. Indonesia, representing Zakat-based philanthropy, the organization that implement Islamic based philanthropy. And we see a great members with us. So even in the process, we see we're taking collaborative steps and hoping that we can come up using this collaborative process to present to the broader audience, not only Asia, but global audience, about what we have discussed. And this is an ongoing process that will take for another 2 years, if I understand correctly. So we will be presenting something at the midterm, kind of a report, early or sometime in the next year, which I can share more of how we have come up and developed ideas in the group. So that is something that we're trying to achieve in the process. But in the longer term, with this collaborative approach, the, co- the base needed for collaboration is trust amongst the foundations, amongst the philanthropists. And the collaboration, or even a platform like this, is key to build a stronger trust amongst us all. So it is very important to have Yayasan Hasanah having this kind of convening. Actually, we, the Nippon Foundation, is convening the similar philanthropy platform annually. We call it Asian Philanthropy Congress. So we have that kind of a platform. Jockey Club is also having a philanthropy platform. And of course, Singapore and others also have. So it's great to have multiple platforms that people can come together, and that would be, in the end, build trust needed for the collaboration, which is we see that as a necessity for the further development of our philanthropy sector in Asia. And we are hoping, at the longer term, we are hoping that the wealth from Asia will grow. That is for sure. But how we can effectively or maximize this opportunity is something that we have to work on. So one of the long-term objectives of us is to try to find or identify the way that how we can maximize this opportunity to have the impactful philanthropy activities done by all sectors, all stakeholders, and hopefully with collaboration partnership.
Thank you. Dr. Leung, I want to ask you, you represent the Institute of Philanthropy, and you describe that as the Think, Fund, Do tank. It's a platform aimed to share best practices, scale collaborations, and even professionalize philanthropy sector. In your experience, what do you think are the critical skills or capacity to enhance the effectiveness of this platform? Can you share a little bit about that?
So if you really think about it, there are a lot of work. First of all, we're not inventing anything here. First acknowledgement is to say, look, we are building on very solid work laid down by people who have been doing it for a very long time, even in Asia. So don't forget that there have been a lot of work done already. So these sharing platforms, so for example, I see Ruth here. Ruth has been doing it for the last 20 some odd years already, pulling us together and thinking about and conceptualizing those things. We have got in Singapore, Lawrence Lien, who's been doing it for so long and actually put money where its mouth is with his family foundation. So we're really building on the work of a lot of fellow colleagues and travelers down this road. Secondly, how do we then think about the broader forces? So we're not doing this just for the global common public good. Think about it. Asia, yes, emerging wealth, and that's where the engine of growth is going to be. Two, if you think about demographics, that's where 60% of humanity lives. If you think about the mosaic of Asia from the Near East to the Far East. So we're not only the generator of wealth and the giver, but also the biggest beneficiary. Three, Asia as a region, we have to admit, have been a little bit of a latecomer because of that history of, let's face it and be frank, colonialism, of coming to develop. And so we haven't actually all had an equal share of that dividend yet. We're now starting, but some of us are getting old quite quickly. Japan, of course, and that's why a lot of the focus, as I learned from Masato-san and my Japanese colleagues, is how do you unlock and recycle that huge wealth that is stored in that generation and then make it do good. But when you have demographic population pyramids that are completely inverted, which is most of Asia, by the way, I think here, in some of the ASEAN countries, is actually better. But certainly, if you think about China, if you think about Japan, if you think about Hong Kong, if you think about even Singapore, we are all going to have to think about how not to go down the road of the European countries and even the Americans, but certainly the European OECD countries. Every single one of those governments is now struggling with the twin burden of demographic change, where you don't have enough people in the base of the pyramid to pay for the retirement and the care of the people at the top of the pyramid, right? And that whole thing actually started very recently, just after the Second War.
Yes.
All right, it started 70, 80 years ago. It's because of that solidarity post-war that they were able to persuade their own people, hey, let's go in with a pay-as-you-go scheme, whether it's pensions or medical benefits. Now you can't afford it because you don't have that pyramid. You don't have the baby boomers to pay for it anymore because they are the ones who need the care. So ultimately, I think what we're talking about is, one is professionalizing the philanthropic sector, but remember, whatever you do with philanthropy, you are never going to provide even a fraction of what you need to provide these social goods. Philanthropic efforts can ever only be catalytic. You need to use that as leverage to unlock and pull together the purely public and the purely private
That's right.
sectors, whether it's capital inputs or provision of services. So that's really the key. That's the catalytic leverage. That's actually your lever. Two, that's where we can afford to make mistakes. It's okay for us to make mistakes because it's just embarrassment, which we sort of say it's learning, right? But it's not okay for governments to make mistakes because they fall, they lose the elections, and no government is going to risk that. So that's the role that we should recognize that we do, and that's where we can innovate and then try to contribute. We wouldn't be solving it, we'll be contributing to some of the solutions of these much bigger forces.
Wonderful. Complementary to what the government does and how we might, help in some of the areas that are not being covered. It's a really important point. Puan, Siti, Kamariah, I want to ask you this question. When you talk about the Asian philanthropy, there are certainly things that they do well, so-called the strength, and especially particularly referring to Malaysia in addressing community development challenges. What are some of the approaches? What do you think are some of the strengths that are more culturally grounded and community-owned? And if you can also share about the challenge that we face and how could we address some of these challenges. If you could share that with us, that's going to be great.
So the community is growing, and in Malaysia we are seeing huge number of civil society organizations being born on a daily basis, and as much as there's a lot of intent to do good, there is still a gap from intent to intervention. And hence, the important narrative that we are unpacking in the last 2 days. And the gap from intent to intervention, it really is a governance framework. And I'd like to believe that Malaysia and ASEAN is really good at governance structure. I think if there's one thing that we do well, it is governance. I've met with so many of our civil society organizations. So I like what was being shared, one of our speakers yesterday, Dr. Jamila, who said that it's not capacity building, it's capacity sharing. And because many of the well-intended individuals in our part of the region already have the good intent. They want to do good, they want to support people. So the capacity sharing that's happening within Hasanah in Malaysia, and also with Dr. Gabriel and Seko-san through the giving of scholarships, has been growing the sector, and the spillover effect is seen across sector, not just within the sector that's doing good, but we're seeing it in government, also seeing it in business. So putting this all together to solve the challenges, of course, require a lot of trust. And building trust is not something that is static. Trust is built every day, every dialogue, every conversation, even in the best of relationships like a marriage, I think, which all of us can relate to. You have to speak to your spouse every day to maintain that trust. And the same happens with our partners, with the people that we serve, which is why, in addition to listening, presence is matter. And all this, it's easy to say that governance is key, filling of forms. So we try and move beyond that, beyond systems, beyond filling of forms, into things that really matter, to fill in the gap between intent to intervention. So that involves not redefining, but reconnecting, rediscovering our purpose, our shared purpose, into something that is empowering in our journey to build a gap. People saying that there's a shortage of funding because certain funding cuts from certain country that must not be named. But does that matter for us here? Because I think there is that resilience whereby we do things for less. I've seen some of the best catalytic programs in Malaysia. For example, one of our programs that's reviving tourism in Perlis started from a funding of 50,000 ringgit, but it's spurring ecotourism in a state. So, which means that there is a certain amount of resilience and creativity and ability to do things with so much care and passion that it makes up for the funding. Yes, money is important, but funding is only part of the equation. It doesn't solve everything. It might create greater problems. But what's more important in us filling in the gap from intent to intervention is to make sure that we bring the most important part of the equation, which is trust, an ability to listen well and engage the community and bring the catalytic change that Dr. Gabriel was saying in a sustained, consistent way, which is actually very close to many of our values in the country. Like as a Muslim, for example, that is very close to the concept of amanah, or your responsibility, or istiqamah, being consistent to doing something. And again, I think these values, which are Asian, but not necessarily religious in nature, because I think we're also seeing that in Japan, and how beautiful gifts are wrapped, because that's how you show care. Even in Hong Kong, how beautiful the reception is every time we go and visit the folks at Dr. Gabriel's organization. And so there's so many things that is already there, but the gap from intent to intervention is not as far as you imagine. It's probably the distance from my heart to yours.
Thank you. I think the common theme that came up here is the trust and, again, listening. So I want to ask a follow-up question to you, and these are some of the questions that have been addressed in the Slido. You know, we don't have all the resources, yet we have many stakeholders to serve. How could we be a bit more creative and innovative in our approach to address, again, the development challenges and to enhance our effectiveness with our interventions? Can you speak on behalf of Yayasan and Hasanah in terms of what are some of these innovative approaches that you're taking to address some of these challenges out there?
It sounds cliche, but it really is listening. I think you listened to some of our social impact champions yesterday. There's Lara, who shared beautifully how she listened to the community in Greg and in her efforts to save our endangered species, the majestic tiger. She listened to the community who said that they need support with regards to livelihood, but you see how proud they were when they're listened to. And this doesn't cost money. I think we like to believe that you have to put millions to buy people's trust, and money does buy trust to a certain extent. But again, as you know, that there's only so much dowry you can provide. Whatever that happens from dowry to the rest of your life, it really is what you do on a daily basis. So one example at Kampung di Tonggang, one of our ecotourism project in Ipoh, Perak, where the indigenous Temia community was having a lot of problem with their youth leaving town. And Ipoh, mind you, it is a wonderful town in Perak, and you wonder why people still want to move from Ipoh to other cities to find work. But that is the reality of many of our towns, not just in Malaysia, but it's also in Asia and in Japan and Singapore and in any other countries. But from listening to the Tok Batin, which is a community leader, we built an ecotourism complex that's completely built from bamboos. We heard from Nilam yesterday, who wants to cultivate initiative where 1 million women are trained on how to plant bamboos and the multiple uses of it. And so in Ipoh, this bamboo tourism complex is attracting attention because it's cooling, and it fits for the weather. And so we have cyclists and also motorbike riders going there just to stay there and drop by. And the town is back bustling with economic activity. And the young people are going back. The youth of Temia community came back to serve the community because there are no jobs. And because Tok Batin, or their leader, knows this is what exactly the community needs. This project won an award at the state level, recognized as a model for ecotourism, and is also funded by the Ministry of Finance. So you can see there, so we experimented a bit, and then the government stepped in with more funding so that it can grow arms and legs. But you're right, like this is where we can experiment. I would not even call it embarrassment. I kind of like the fact that you can pivot, experiment, and do it just like painting or being an artist. There's no ugly art, it's really just art. So this is a unique sector where a lot of those innovation pivots can happen, and things don't become perfect overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. So I think more investments can and must go into this sector so that we can make more beautiful mistakes, then the government can pick it up and make it grow arms and legs and bigger as part of nation building.
Wonderful. I mean, I'm just trying to be very mindful of the time. We don't have that much time left. But we've got funders here, we've got social entrepreneurs here, activists here, all with the common goal of wanting to improve our community. Very shortly, can we have every one of the panelists maybe give a word, maybe a call to action, maybe a word of encouragement? I think that would be great. Can we keep it short?
Sure.
Yeah. Dr. Leung, you want to begin?
Right. Well, this is the usual sort of wrap-up. So the moderator is very kind, basically, to tell us to shut up. I'll give you 30 more seconds. But in all seriousness, I think that what we are engaged in, and we're so privileged to be doing this as a job, to be honest. So we're so privileged to be able to try out these new things. Should we go with even more business-driven approaches of KPIs in making sure that we deliver in an efficient way and in an optimal way? Should we go the other way and say we really trust our grantees are much closer to the beneficiary communities? So let's not dictate something from headquarters, let's just give them the freedom. Should we try now in this 2.0 stage of ESG or impact capital, okay? So all of the comments are now gone in terms of, just label something green or something social good and then people give you money, asking for less than commercial returns. I think that stage 1.0 is gone. We've also had challenges, particularly in the US, which is the finance capital of the world, to say, look, we don't like this woke ideology. You shouldn't invest according to ESG credentials. Let's get rid of it. It's the worst 3 letters of the English alphabet now in Wall Street. So I think that is all behind us. How should we take it forward? So now we've got social impact capital. How do we use a little bit of philanthropic seed money to leverage private capital into public good, but not necessarily public projects. How should we bring that forward? And third, social entrepreneurs, you are so great. But we realize you are living, some of you are living hand to mouth. How do we make sure that you have the space to innovate but also to survive? You are not living in a dorm room in Southern California somewhere. You're not in the Bay Area. You don't have the great IPO as the ultimate payoff. So how do we get that model really going such that we can have these small projects and scale it ultimately for what we all want to do, and that is listen and act?
Right. I wanted to echo what Dr. Gabriel has just said repeatedly. We are the philanthropy funding is the capital that can take highest risks, and we can also be catalytic. So use us, especially the social enterprise and social entrepreneurs, that you can use our funding to test your ideas, which may not be ready for investment yet, but with our funding, you can pilot, you can experiment, you can make failures. We can take those kind of risks. So, and we need, as a foundation, we want those new ideas to be submitted to us, so that we can support those ideas. And even many would end up in failure. If 1 in 10 be successful, that is already a success of the foundation, the funder who provides philanthropic capital. So that is one thing that I want to submit today, is that, again, that is more of listening, partnership, and discussion. And with that kind of a relationship, we can reflect more your innovative ideas, your new ideas, disruptive ideas, into more practical and more feasible way. So.
So, being a part of the ASEAN Philanthropic Commission, also AVPN and the Malaysian Philanthropic Network, I'm seeing a lot of hope in this realm, in this sector. There's so much funding and resources floating already. So I think I take it as it's our collective role and responsibility to grow our social entrepreneurs, our civil society organizations. Yes, they know, I think quite a number of them actually went to Princeton, top universities of the world. I really met some of the most amazing, smart individuals working at the depths of the forest in Sabah, in Perak, already with their spirit and idealism. I think I take it upon myself, and also a collective duty that we share in this country, to build their capacity so that they become strong enough to tap into some of the funding that's already available in Malaysia and in Asia. And it's also our duty to become the bridge that connects the people with a great intent to make a huge difference in the societies and the world that they live in, towards the funding that they require, so that they don't have to live from hand to mouth, so that this sector becomes a dignified profession that's not only professional, but also treated well, and they're able to live well. Because doing good does not mean at the expense of your own personal well-being and goodness. So how do you then make it sure that sustainability is also embedded in the lives of the individuals doing good in this sector? So from the intent to intervention, I call upon each and every one of you to collectively hold the hands of those with the good hearts to do good in this sector, nurture them, so that one day collectively as a nation and as Asia and ASEAN, we're able to grow in our own unique special way and show to the West or to other parts of the world outside the region that ASEAN have what it takes to brave the 21st century and take the world to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, I personally have enjoyed a lot learning personally. I think, thank you very much for the word of encouragement to all of us. Just, wrapping up, I think I've picked up about 3-4 points here. One, you kept on mentioning about the essence of paying attention to what is falling apart in our society. That's what we do. And I think philanthropy is one of the ways to exercise leadership. Diagnosing, leading, listening to people is going to be very important. We also talked about the outcome, but you also mentioned about the way in which we achieve that outcome. So not only doing the right thing, but also doing it right is also what I think we have gained from the discussion that we were able to have. Well, thank you so much. Can we give a big round of applause to our stellar panelists? Thank you very much.